Well, hello everyone. Good evening. This is Mel here from Sneakers Corner, and we have the demolition man himself, Sheikh Murad. How are you doing, Murad?
Hello there. It's good to be with you live. This is my first live, so I'm not very confident as I am. Not my usual.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a bit scary for the both of us going live because we can't edit anything out, as they say. But let me just, I'm getting feedback here from my phone. But right, so I don't know how many we have here in the house at the minute. This is all sort of new technology. So those who are present, just give a hello. And we see Suk Medich, if that's how you pronounce it. Hello to you. And our good friend Vilenius, who has got up at 3:50 in the morning for this.
Wow.
That's just incredible, man. Your dedication deserves a t-shirt. If we have t-shirts, we'll have to get you a t-shirt once if we ever do one. So hello, Suresh has no vibe. Sladana John, Fahim Khan, Yo, JC,
Could
Gabriel.
everyone just write what country are they watching from?
Yeah,
Because this will be interesting.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be really nice. And it's amazing, so many new names as well here. Well, hello, Fahim from the UK. Great to see you here. And Zook, USA, Gabriel.
USA, Australia.
Cool. Yeah, excellent. UAE, excellent. Nice to see you guys. And Jojo, yes, hello there, Jojo. We've exchanged a few emails on the Netherlands, yeah. Hasnawi, raised in Saudi, excellent, good stuff. It's great to see some
Egypt, raised in Saudi. Hasnawi vibe.
That's excellent. So it's great to see so many from the Middle East.
And reasons answers.
Oh, reasons answered, yeah. Hello there, Thaddeus. How's it going? And Alejandro from Canada. Yeah, how's it going, Thaddeus? Yeah, we're dying to share what we've got. We're just going to allow people to kind of to come in, just to make sure people don't miss the beginning of it. Suresh is in India, so that's fantastic. Wow, we've got an amazing international audience. Yeah, we're running a little bit late. We thought we were doing a live broadcast a few minutes ago, and it turned out it was heading to a private video or something. It's our first time, so there's obviously going to be teething problems. And Indonesia, good lad, or I shouldn't assume it's a lad, but anyway, Gungus Pijet, so nice to see you. And Lee, our good friend Lee from Devonshire. I've cycled through your
very good comments always from Lee.
Yeah, fantastically. I'll always look forward to seeing your comments. And you've actually got one of the most beautiful counties in England. I've cycled through it twice, I think, at this stage. I love it. Rajan, UK lad in Mumbai. Wow. Yeah, it worked out for you, Thaddeus. Yeah, so welcome, everyone. I don't know what the numbers are at the minute, but what do you think? Should we start now, Murad?
Yes, but before we start, we have to tell the people that today we will be looking at a historical Muhammad. We might be getting our hand on the real historical Muhammad. Who was he and where did he come from and what was his real name? And this is totally new information. Totally new. So it's not Qutham, as some people say, and it's not all these silly theories. This is a new hard evidence theory, so they should stick till the end.
Yeah. So this is also, this is very evidence-based. And what's interesting, you had a sneaky idea of the conclusion that I came to, Murad, before I got there. Isn't that, without giving too much away, you had read this idea before, and it just so happened I came to the same conclusion independently.
Yes, I was actually keeping it a surprise for the audience, but you reached the same conclusion on your independent research. So this is very good, actually.
Yeah, it's the best way for it to happen, because then that seems to suggest that we're on solid foundations. Yeah, I think the way I would approach this for everyone is forget everything you've heard before. Start with a clean slate, because I think if you try and mix your preconceptions of who Muhammad was with this, we'll call it a theory or hypothesis, it's not going to work for you. So just push that all aside, and later we'll try and look at how it came to be that the person of history became morphed into a different person later on, and maybe why he was forgotten about as well, which is quite interesting, because he literally drops out of history pretty rapidly, and it's only decades later that the myth of Muhammad built up. And yeah, so I don't know if many of you have seen the video that we did about Mani. We did it a few months ago, and in the one part of the video, I went to a library, and I said at the video that at that stage, all the evidence was pointing to Mesopotamia. And this was even after you had said, Murad, even before that, you had come up with your Iraq theory and your Central Asian theory. That was a few months ago. And I must admit, the day that you did that video, and I think it was that back in November, maybe, or October, I was very skeptical at the time, and I thought, there's no way there's evidence for that. And, slowly but surely we start to see evidence. And so that's what led us to here. I'm looking at the comments there, and I see someone saying, I'm from Sutherland, Gregory. So welcome from Sutherland. Yeah, so shall we start? What do you think, Murad? Let's get stuck in. Okay, so without further ado, I think that plenty of people have arrived at this stage. So
I must tell the audience that this is your research and this is your PowerPoint, so I will just be commenting every now and then.
Yeah. No, the other thing is I'm no longer able to see the comments, but we'll have a Q&A at the end. So forgive me if I'm not responding to individual comments. Can you just confirm that you can all see the PowerPoint, or at least Murad, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, I see the PowerPoint, and I have an eye on the chat.
Okay, that's great. So let's begin. So there's no record of Muhammad in rock inscriptions, so he must have gone by another name at the time. So that's the hunch behind all of this. If a real person led the Arabs in rebellion against the Persians and the Byzantines, then there must be some trace of him in the record in order to identify him. So the idea is that we've been looking for the wrong name in the wrong place, and that's why we haven't found him. So just be clear what we're trying to do. We are not saying that Muhammad is a non-factual person. Just the biography that we've been fed for years is a fiction. So that person is a myth, but behind the myth, there's a real person. A few years ago, I came up with a little principle in my mind, which is behind every myth, there's a fact. Behind every fact, there's a myth. And this applies in this case. So we're looking at the fact behind the myth. So yes, we start with
Patricia Kroon, when she wrote about the historical Muhammad, she said that any idea, it has a nucleus. And around this nucleus, you keep building the myth like an onion.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah. So we're going back to the central core of the onion today.
Yes.
And I think there will be lots of elements that you'll see where it all came from, and you can see how it evolved to what we know today. So Sebius in the 660s mentions the following. 12 peoples representing all the tribes of the Jews assembled at the city of Edessa. When they saw that the Persian troops had departed, leaving the city in peace, they closed the gates and fortified themselves. They refused entry to troops of the Roman lordship. Thus, Heraclius, emperor of the Byzantines, gave the order to besiege it. When the Jews realized that they could not militarily resist him, they promised to make peace. Opening the city gates, they went before him, and Heraclius ordered that they should go and stay in their own place, with emphasis on their own place, which obviously will be of interest where that will be, and we'll look at that in a moment. Let's focus on the name Edessa. It has an alternative name, which is Osroene, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. Pliny the Elder refers to the natives of Osroene and the kingdom of Commagene as Arabs and the region as Arabia. Now, some of you might find that surprising, but way up in Syria at one time, they referred to the people as Arabs and the region as Arabia. Abgar II is called an Arab philarch by Plutarch, while Abgar V is described as king of the Arabs by Tacitus. The region of Osroene is in northeast Syria or northern Iraq between the Euphrates and the Tigris. So this is already a bit of a bombshell. I'm sure most people probably think that Arabia is identical to Saudi Arabia today, but in the past that wasn't the case. There was a different definition of what constituted Arabia. And obviously, I should point out, and I think it's kind of obvious at this stage, when we refer to Arabs, we're not referring to an ethnicity, it's more a general identity. So akin to the way we might say American, and within that there can be any number of ethnicities. So a lot of these names and places are overlapping, and the mistake perhaps we might think is that each label is exclusive. No, you could be a Syrian and an Arab, you could speak Arabic and you could speak Greek at the same time, and so on. Now, Heraclius ordered that they should go and stay in their own place, as we saw. Where was their own place? So there's two options, really. Israel, that might be the obvious choice, perhaps, or Mesopotamia, Iraq. Well, the Jewish exilarch resided in Babylon. So that's basically the king of the Jews, resided in Babylon during the era of the Parthians, the Sassanids, and the Abbasids up until the Mongol invasion of Baghdad in 1258. So at this time in history, when Heraclius says that they should go and stay in their own place, the obvious choice would be to take that arrow pointing down to the right, and you'd probably see Babylon, okay?
Yes.
Not down to the left. I hope that's clear for everyone. Now, I've used a really old map, simply just so we can see the name Babylon appear on Edessa. But obviously the land borders are different in the 7th century. So yeah, so we appreciate that. But the function of the map is just to let us know where Edessa was and where Jerusalem and Babylon is. Okay, let's move on. So Sabius then says, so they departed, taking the road through the desert to Tajikistan, Arabia. So Tajikistan, Arabia, to the sons of Ishmael. The Jews called the Arabs to their aid and familiarized them with the relationship that they had through the books of the Old Testament. Now, if you remember a few weeks back, Murad had identified Tajikistan as up near the Caspian Sea, and that was based on information that you had found somewhere, isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, you subsequently found a map with Tajikistan on, which made you realize actually it's a different place, since not the case.
Yes, I found a 7th century map drawn by someone who knows ancient Armenian, and he placed Tajikistan right where you show it in Iraq.
Yeah. So where was Tajikistan? Bearing in mind the direction we just pointed, Tajikistan was there, which is it's just on the route to Babylon, where the exilarch was. So it makes perfect sense now, rather than way off towards the Caspian. So it now starts to fit, and there's the map. And in red there you can see Tajikistan. And just to the left of the red circle, you may just about make out a city called Kalinikum. And above it is Aleppo, and Edessa would be where the top of that red line is there. And You may also notice that the river Euphrates is sort of on one side and the Tigris is on the other side. Now, we found this as well. Ahudima, a resident of Mesopotamia in the late 6th century, notes about nomads. There are many people between the Tigris and the Euphrates who lived in tents and were barbarians and warlike. Numerous were their superstitions, and they were the most ignorant of all the people of the earth. And it notes Iranians thought of Arabs as a subservient nation, and Arabs saw Iranians as a bully. And so there was an Arab-Ajam schism. Ajam meaning foreigner, but in this case, it would mean Persian.
Remember when back then I told you that Ajam means Persian, not anything else? This confirms it right away. So the Quran, when it says I am Arabic and I'm not Ajam, it means I'm not Persian.
Yeah. And because of this location, you can see why that's a sore point, because as we saw, in so many different videos, when you have two groups living close to each other and overlapping each other, trying to identify yourself, you have to say, well, I'm not with that other group. You may be living in the same land, but you're desperate to distinguish yourself from the other group. So that's why they really emphasize this idea. So this land should be familiar to you. You will have seen this for years on the telly. Kalinicum is the old name for Raqqa. So that area is actually where ISIS a few years ago took over. So there's,
yes,
you can see, Raqqa. So that very land where ISIS had control, it was just a barren desert with no one living in that area, or it was very sparsely populated. That was the same area where the Jews met Muhammad. Now,
I want to tell you something before I forget. Till today, Iraq and Iran, they are very hard against each other. Iran wants to swallow Iraq because it was part of it, and Iraq sees itself as an independent nation, and they want nothing from Iran. It seems that this was very old conflict, as you see, as we see here.
Yeah. So you see the map there, and you see the region around Hira. Just north of that was Tajikistan that we just mentioned. Okay. So just south of Tajikistan was the Lakhmid capital of Hira. Now, for those who are not familiar with what we've spoken about before about the Lakhmids, that area in red was the Lakhmid region, and just to the west of it was the Ghaznid region, and they were the buffer zones between the Byzantines in the west and the Sassanids in the east. Okay, so this capital is going to be important to our story today. So, who is more prominent than a king? Who but a king can give orders? We continue with Sebius. Although the Arabs were convinced of their close relationship, they were unable to get a consensus from their multitude, for they were divided from each other by religion. In that period, a certain one of them, a man of the sons of Ishmael, named Mahmed, became prominent. A sermon about the way of truth, supposedly at God's command, was revealed to them, and Mahmed taught them to recognize the God of Abraham, especially since he was informed and knowledgeable about Mosaic history. Because the command had come from on high, he ordered them all to assemble together and to unite in faith. Notice the reference to the God of Abraham in connection to Muhammad. As you would have learned in the previous video, I'm suggesting that one of the sects that was in existence at the time was an ancient one that was focused on Abraham, and over time they picked up a knowledge of Moses and Aaron, and this became a central part of their belief. They were still a minority, but they were in the elite part of the community, so they had a lot of influence. They were dealing with Christians, they were dealing with people who were pagans who still worshipped towards Petra and so on, but they managed to rally the troops, as it were, around the central Arab identity, which was based on being a descendant from Ishmael.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so you can see from the map, we are looking for Muhammad in this region. So this is going to be key in order to fit in with Sebios. So this is where the Jews met Muhammad. So we're looking for him here. So we're looking for a man who was supposedly expelled from his city and later returned in victory. Now, the reason I say this is simply that the Islamic tradition is really strong about the Hijra, the idea that Muhammad was expelled from a city which was referred to as Mecca, even though that may not be necessarily the case. And then later he returned after a number of years and took over the city, right? So
Yes.
To bring us back to your point about the onion, this is a kernel of history that we want to recover. We're not going to say that none of this ever happened, because that would be hard to believe. But as we will discover a city where this historical person was expelled from and who later returned in victory, which would confirm the tradition, the core of the tradition. Okay? So let's look at some additional clues. Do you want to say something?
I said yes.
Oh, okay. So the fragments of the chart of Jacob of Edessa. So notice the source and where it comes from. Edessa, very key, because it was a local source, considering what we just said. 692, so very early. It refers to Muhammad, the first king of the Arabs, began to reign in the year 932 AG or 622 CE. Obviously, caution must be applied to dates, as there is great confusion in the chronology. Now, the date when he became king may not be the date where he first started to lead them, because there might have been a combination of leaders at the beginning, and then eventually it became him as the overall leader. Okay. Likewise, another source, Ad Anam, from the year 705, says Muhammad came upon the earth in 932 of Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian. In other words, 620 to 621. He reigned for 7 years. In fact, both of them say he ruled for 7 years. But again, this is the problem with chronology. Some chronologies say he ruled for 10 years, some 7 years. I think they simply don't know that side of things.
You see, the Islamic tradition also doesn't know. Sometimes it says that he went to Medina for 10 years, sometimes for 7. So they also don't know.
Yeah, there's some reason behind that, why they're so confused about it. But what we're dealing with is a fog of war. And when you're dealing with a fog of war, it's very hard to get facts, because, you know, how can you extract information when there's wars going on and battles? So the Zuknin Chronicle of 775 says the following: their first king was a man from among them whose name was Muhammad. Okay, so there are 3 sources. Now, just keep that in mind as we move on. So if he was a king, then the following has a different meaning to how it is commonly portrayed. So fragments of the chart of Jacob. And Muhammad goes down on commercial businesses to the lands of Palestine and of the Arabias and of Phoenicia, of the Tyrians. Now, if he's a king, when it says he's going down on commercial businesses, this is not just one individual on a camel going down selling a few sheepskins and coming back with something else. This is much more major. If he's a king, it could be him going on behalf of the Lakhmid region. So that's a different type of commercial business. We're talking a much bigger scale here. You know, this is not minor detail, big scale stuff. It would be like, I don't know, a modern leader visiting a country to form a trading partnership or agreement or something like that. You know, maybe like Trump visiting China or something like that.
Yes.
So that's the level it should be interpreted. Now, if you just think Muhammad was just a little trader, you know, going around with his sheep and goats and all that, you've misunderstood this quotation. And I've been guilty of misunderstanding it, because I didn't take into account what it said about him being a king. Now, it also says, again, if he was a king, then this also has a different meaning. At the beginnings, they kept to the traditions of Muhammad, who was their instructor, to such an extent that they inflicted the death penalty on anyone who was seen to act brazenly against his laws. This is John Bar Pincaye from 690. Now, I used to think, oh, this is an example of his religious extremism. He's a fanatic. But actually, if he was a king, then kings do put people to death if they don't follow the laws, especially if you're dealing with a wild group of people that you've got to, rule with an iron fist. What do you make of that interpretation, Mohammed?
Yes, this makes more sense. So if he was a king, then he would give the order and people will act. And this is true, by the way, in the Islamic tradition. If you curse God, you're fine. If you curse Muhammad, then there is a big problem. Till today, you can face the death penalty.
Yeah. Now, the other thing as well is the fact that they're dealing with the Persians, and there's a huge problem of betrayal among the camp. So obviously and also betrayal with the Byzantines as well. So once they're, let's say, on the campaign trail, they want everyone to be on side, and one way of doing that is the death penalty for treason. So that's why I think that's important. Now another detail which is often sort of overlooked, I think, is that this person must be a leader of the Tayyi too. Thomas the Presbyter, writing in 640 approximately, complicates things for us by saying that he was the leader of the Tayyi. He says, AG 945 in Diction 7, on Friday the 4th of February, at the 9th hour, there was a battle between the Romans and the Arabs of Muhammad, Syriacus Tayyi of Muhammad, in Palestine, 12 miles east of Gaza. Now, so this makes our life harder or easier depending on how you look at it, because now we're not just looking for someone who's a king of a region, but also we're looking for someone who's also a tribal leader. In fact, the Tayyi is quite a significant tribe as well. It's not just a small tribe. So who were the Tayyi? Tay or Tayyi is a large and ancient Arab tribe. The patronymic of Tay is, maybe you can say it for me?
Yes, Al-Ta'i.
Al-Ta'i. So that's the tribe that this person Muhammad, let's call him for now, must be a member of and ideally be a leader of, because we would expect the person who's going to lead the tribe would be the leader. So it's kind of makes sense that he would have to be the leader of this group, as well as be a king of a region.
So you have a king and you have the tribe of Tai. You have two big indications, and then let's look at further evidence.
Yeah. And the thing is, because of having both of those hats on, it means he has an awful lot of power. Should he want to use it, this person would have a lot of power. So while it is late, Byzantine Arab Chronicle of 741-754 suggests that he was from nobility. Born of a most noble tribe of that people, he was a very prudent man and a foreseer of very many future events. Now, notice the emphasis on the fact he's in the upper echelons of society. Do you see how different that is from the Islamic tradition? Like in the Islamic tradition, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically he's born in poverty, essentially, starving, and so on.
Yes, he was not poor. Yes.
Yeah. So this is obviously a romanticizing of the story. They even have him as an orphan. So he's like poor little orphan. He hadn't got a penny to rub together and all that kind of stuff. So, but this is saying something completely different to the Islamic tradition. So this is all heading in the same direction. 618 is a key year. We're looking for a rebel leader from that year. Why? Well, if you look at the Hispanic Chronicle of 754, it says the following. The Saracens rebelled in 618, the 7th year of the Emperor Heraclius, and appropriated for themselves Syria, Arabia, and Mesopotamia, more through trickery than through the power of their leader Muhammad, and they devastated the neighboring provinces, proceeding not so much by means of open attacks as by secret incursions. Thus, by means of cunning and fraud rather than power, they incited all of the frontier cities of the empire and finally rebelled openly, shaking the yoke from their necks. Now, I don't know about you, Murad, but when I saw this first, I thought, oh, they've really got it wrong here. It's way too early. It should be all happening maybe 622 or something. But now I'm beginning to think that this might have some basis to it. What's your thoughts?
I think this is the more accurate one, because there are other chronologies in the outside sources that put Muhammad way earlier than the Islamic tradition itself. So there is no problem here.
Yeah. Now, there is an apparent contradiction between what this says and what we've just said before, because you remember those earlier sources said that he became king in 622, but if the Saracens rebelled in 618, it could be, as we say, that it was a bit disordered at the beginning, but eventually there was unification, and in 622 he was appointed their leader overall. Okay. Now, John Barra Pincaye in 690, Summary of World History, Book 15, says the following. So the Lord, to punish the sons of Hagar for the ravages they had made, gave them 2 leaders from the beginning of their kingdom and divided them into 2 sections. This was so that we might understand the word that was spoken by our Saviour. But they were united until they had subjected the whole earth. But when they returned to tranquility and rested from war, they fought one another. Any thoughts on that one?
It could be about the Shia-Sunni split, or maybe it could be about something earlier. I know the source, but I don't have a good grip on what to say about it.
Yeah. My take on it, I think this is even before the Sunni Shia divide. This is actually, from my understanding, it's about the Ghassanids and the Lakhmids. So when they united, they had a leader for the Ghassanids, they had a leader for the Lakhmids, and they worked in unison. So later, this would lead to civil wars because they couldn't keep a united front for too long. There was 2 fitnas in the 7th century, and this fits in with this sort of narrative that we see here. Now, so that's what I'm talking about here. You have the Ghassanids on the left or the west, and the Lakhmids in the east. So Ghassanids in the west, Lakhmids in the east, and we later see the division between Muawiyah of Damascus in the west and Ali in Hira to the east, which that conflict happened between 656 and 658. Now, those in the west said, superiority is due to us, and the king must be chosen from among us. Those of the east contradicted them and claimed that it was to them that this was due. As a result of this contention, they came to blows. Notice this bit. When they had settled the business according to their methods, the victory fell to the Westerners called Umayyads, and this after a great slaughter that took place between them. A man among them, named Muawiyah, took the reins of government of the 2 empires, Persian and Roman. Justice flourished under his reign, and a great peace was established in the countries that were under his government, and allowed everyone to live as they wished. Now, from my reading of that suggests to me that there was no caliphate until Muawiyah took power, because up until that point, all there was great slaughter and division. Any thoughts?
Yes, this is what all the evidence is pointing to, the numismatic evidence and the archaeological evidence. It all started with Muawiyah, nothing before.
Yeah. Now, we have further confirmation from a chronicle that is a favorite of yours, I think, Fredegar, from the 7th century. From the 7th century, and this is actually, there is a copy of it that's actually dated to 715, so that's pretty good evidence. It says the latter, under 2 commanders, were approximately 200,000 strong, and it goes on. So basically, it confirms the idea that there were 2 leaders of the Arabs at the beginning. Okay.
Yes.
So who are we looking for? So ideally, we're looking for a Lakhmid king from 618 who became a rebel. Why do we think that? Well, because we're looking for a king, and the nearest neighborhood would be Hira. Hira would make sense if they met Muhammad on the way to Babylon. Hira's on the way to Babylon. It kind of makes sense to me. So that's the reason why I've picked Hira, and Hira is the capital for the Lakhmid side, which is the side that the Jews were going down along to meet Muhammad. So that seems like a logical choice. Ideally, someone who was kicked out of a city, for example, Hira in this case, recent to that year. So could be the year before, 617, 616, that kind of thing. Why are we saying 618? Just in case you've forgotten, because it says in an earlier source we saw the Saracens rebelled in that year. So hopefully I'm making this clear as we go along, and I'm not making it difficult for you to follow. Now, and the other thing that would be like a cherry on the cake is we would like him not only to be kicked out of this city, but also to come back in victory and reconquer the city. So if that happens, obviously that would be a nice little piece to the jigsaw. Right? Now, what happened to Hira? We're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but it's key. It was conquered under Muhammad's general Khalid. Following the Battle of Hira, the city was captured by the Saracens under the command of Khalid ibn al-Walid in May 633. Hira was later abandoned and its materials were used to create Kufa. Now, when that happened, I'm not sure. It probably happened over a long period of time, but that's not particularly significant. Did Muhammad have in addition to the title Muhammad, any nickname to help trace him? Yeah, like that would be helpful because we don't have a lot to go on. So it'd be helpful if in addition to Muhammad, he had a nickname. And obviously, where would we go to find that nickname? Well, the Islamic tradition would be a good place to see if there's any other clues there. So even though we don't consider al-Bukhari especially reliable, it may contain folklore that has survived the passage of time that might give us some clues. Now, so we look in Sahih al-Bukhari, and we see the strange reference to the cause of Ibn Abi Kabsha has become conspicuous as the king of Bani al-Asfar is afraid of him. So who is this person? At this stage, we can't think it's Muhammad because he doesn't say Muhammad, but we actually will find al-Bukhari referring to him again with a reference to Muhammad.
But go back.
This, in fact,
I want to show you something.
Yeah.
King of Bani al-Asfar. You know, Bani al-Asfar, if you translate it literally, it will be the people of the blonde. So the blonde people. Is
the Byzantines?
Yes.
Or the Greeks? Yeah.
So
wow, I didn't realize that.
Yes, this is how they are called in the Islamic tradition.
Oh, brilliant.
I think in particular it means people of Constantinople, because there is a hadith of Muhammad saying, if you conquer Constantinople, you will get the blonde girls. Just
okay.
Just put it this way.
Yeah. Okay. So we're suspecting that this person here may be Muhammad, without giving too much away. Now, Kabsha means sheep for sacrifice. So Abi Kabsha meant father of sheep. And the idea behind this is presumably that his followers are sheep. They're gullible and they're perhaps being led to the slaughter, perhaps as well. Would it have that connotation, would you think?
I wouldn't give it too much.
No,
I think it's just derogatory, but nothing more.
Yeah, nothing more. Nothing probably too deep, but it was certainly an insulting nickname.
Yes.
Now, lucky for us, we have a confirmation that it is indeed referring to the Prophet Muhammad. I told my companions that the question of Ibn Abi Kabsha, the Prophet Muhammad, has become so prominent that even the king of Bani al-Sar is afraid of him. Now, let's explain this here. Ibn means son of, Abi means father of, and Kabsha means sheep. So it's a strange phrase, the son of the father of sheep. Is that how?
Yes.
That'd be right. That's how you would literally translate it. Yeah.
Yes, it will be son of father of sheep.
Yeah. Now, going a little bit further then, this ties in with the context of the Doctrina Jacobi regarding the forced baptism of Jews. Okay. So Heraclius replied, "At night when I looked at the stars, I saw that the leader of those who practiced circumcision had appeared, become the conqueror. Who are they who practice circumcision?" The people replied, "Except the Jews, nobody practiced circumcision, so you should not be afraid of them," i.e. Jews. Further down, having heard the news, he, Heraclius, ordered the people to go and see whether the messenger of Gassan was circumcised. The people, after seeing him, told Heraclius that he was circumcised. Heraclius then asked him about the Arabs. The messenger replied, "Arabs also practice circumcision." Now, I can't get rid of that there out of my way. But that's the key thing there. He discovers that the Arabs practice circumcision, and this obviously frightened him because he had a dream saying that people of the circumcision would
What
take
is
over.
the source for this?
This is from Al-Bukhari.
This is Al-Bukhari.
Yeah. So this actually probably is this is probably Al-Bukhari using a written source, I think, in this case. So this is probably the most historical piece from Al-Bukhari, I would say.
I just want to say that the Quran doesn't say that the male should be circumcised.
Yeah. 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 So there are other sources outside of Islam.
So the Arabs at that time, not 100% sure that they were circumcised. They follow the Quran.
You broke up there. Do you want to say that again?
I say the Arabs at that time, if they were following the Quran, then they were not circumcised.
If we're talking about the early 7th century, I would say that they were circumcised, and the Quran wasn't in existence at that stage. But there was, if we turn to the Abrahamist sects that I mentioned before, it had been part of that practice, or part of their practice for centuries before. It didn't depend on the Quran or Muhammad or anything like that. It was a long established tradition. And in the video that I showed earlier on today, I gave multiple sources that point this out, the idea that there was a long imitation of the Jews among some of the Arabs.
Yeah, so it's important to note that the Quran is not really the book of these people. That's not really attached to them.
Well, it's probably, yeah, I think some parts of it do overlap with it, but they obviously are taken from other sources. So I suppose in that respect, it's not just of these people. It's kind of a mixed bag from different sources. But anyway, let's refocus. The Arabs practiced circumcision because they followed the religion of Abraham. Obviously, a certain amount of them did. I can't establish at this stage how many of them did. I think there was a certain spectrum among the Arabs from, if you like, those who were strictly Abrahamist, all the way to those who were 100% pagan, and there was degrees between the two polar opposites, you know what I mean? So there were some Arabs who followed some parts of the Abrahamist sect, and then there were some parts of the pagan, and they mixed the two. So some were pure followers of the monotheistic belief, and some were more polytheist in their outlook. So what I'm saying to you is the situation was very complex, and I'm intentionally trying to avoid any sort of reductionist simplification of what was going on. So it's a bit more complicated than we might imagine.
Yes, I agree.
So our candidate, the Sasanian governor of Al-Hira from 602 to 617, was an Arab. He was a co-governor of the city alongside the Persian noble Nakhiragan. But in 617, they were both deposed and replaced by Azed Bey. Nothing more is recorded of this governor, but he had quite an interesting name in light of what Thomas the Presbyter writes, which I'll remind you again. At the 9th hour, there was a battle between the Romans and the Arabs of Muhammad, Tayyaye of Muhammad, in Palestine, 12 miles east of Gaza. So his name is, and it's a pity we don't have a drum roll.
Can I say it?
Iyas. Yeah, please say it.
Iyas ibn Qubaysa al-Ta'i.
Thank you. The leader of the Tayyaye. So this, we believe, is the real person behind Muhammad. So this is a historical moment. Let's just take a second to breathe in. Now, so this guy was a king. He was also a leader of the Tayyaye, and we're going to find out more about him. So let's remind ourselves, in that period, a certain one of them, a man of the sons of Ishmael, named Muhammad. So he was a son of Ishmael. He became prominent, i.e., became a king. A sermon about the way of truth, supposedly God's command, was revealed to them. And Muhammad taught them to recognize the God of Abraham. Well, he would, because I would argue he's an Abrahamist, especially since he was informed and knowledgeable about Mosaic history, another part of the Abrahamic sect. Because the command had come from on high, now this could be interpreted as on high as in from God, or it could be on high as in from the upper echelons of royalty, in other words, from him. He ordered them all to assemble together and to unite in faith. So that bit on high, like it's often assumed, isn't it, that it's on high meaning from God, but now that we know that he's a king, it could have that other meaning. What do you think, Murad? Or both?
I didn't. Yes, or both. I think Sidious is talking more religious, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I suppose he would interpret things through a religious lens as well, so that's probably where he puts the emphasis on. Okay, now we got this as well. A little bit of background. Lakhmid King Numan was assassinated by Khusro II Parvez. But let me start again. Lakhmid King Numan was assassinated by Khusro II Parvez around 602 CE. A letter from Parvez in which he justified putting Numan to death and ending Lakhmid rule in Hira claimed that Numan and his clan had conspired with the Arab tribes against us by convincing them that our empire will pass to them. I learned this information from a letter. So I killed him, and I love this part, and appointed an ignorant Arabian who knows nothing of all this to rule Hira. So,
it's a savage.
It was a savage thing, an ignorant Arabian. That's who they picked. Now, if you think about all the references to Muhammad being illiterate and ignorant and so on, maybe this is the source of it. But I think it's worth noting that, from the Persian point of view, all Arabs were ignorant. So it isn't especially that big of a deal, but it's interesting at the same time. Now, further evidence. We look at the Battle of Dekar. The Battle of Dekar is said to have taken place between the Sassanid Persian army with Arab Lakhmid soldiers led by Iyas ibn Qabisa and their opponents, the Arab tribesmen of Bakr ibn Wa'il. Modern scholars date it to between 604 and 611. It may be 609 AD. Now, I don't know if the audience has spotted this, and I didn't make a point of pointing it out, actually, but can you see how Iyas ibn Qabisa is only slightly different from the nickname? Can you say the nickname again for us?
Of Muhammad is Ibn Abi Kabsha, and this is Ibn Qubaysa.
Yeah, so it's only a slight variation, and I think it's literally just dropping the E sound out of it, and you go from Kabisha to Kabsha.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we also have this from Tabari. Strangely, according to the Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad allegedly said about this battle, "This is the battle in which the Arabs took equitable vengeance on the Persians, and they achieved this victory through me." So let's look
So
at it
who
again.
are you? Who are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Who is speaking to
So-
me now?
Yeah, so it's led by Iyas ibn Qabisa. Now, what's interesting is the Islamic tradition has put Muhammad on the winning side because on this occasion, Iyas was on the losing side. But it's interesting that Muhammad is involved in the battle, but he's on the opposite side apparently. Being the winner, of course, he always is the winner. And they want to hide the fact that he might have ever fought on the Persian side. Now he does eventually go against the Persians, but at this stage he's on the Persian side. Now, this bit I have also found in Tabari, and I think some parts I've taken from the footnotes. Some I found in the main text. I think this one here is from the footnotes. So even before Al-Nu'man was appointed, Iyas was also made interim governor. So Iyas wasn't such an ignorant Arab after all, because he was appointed twice. So even before Al-Nu'man was appointed, he had a short stint as an interim governor, and then after Al-Nu'man was killed, they brought Iyas back out of the wilderness to be governor of Hira again. So let's read from it. It was Iyas bin Qabisa who was nearly a quarter of a century later appointed, this time by Khusro II, governor or ruler in Al-Hira after the Lakhmid al-Nu'man's deposition in 602. At some point, the Persian king awarded Iyas 30 villages along the Euphrates as a grant for life and made him administrator of the district of Ain al-Tamr. And down below, we see the same passage in Agani has Iyas bin Qabisa for the interim governor in Al-Hira before the choice of Al-Nu'man was made. So I thought that was interesting. So obviously, he's been made a very powerful person with a lot of pull and power and wealth. Why did the Persians appoint Iyas bin Qabisa? Like, it doesn't seem to make sense if they called him an ignorant Arab. But if we look at the following, we can see why. Al-Nu'man's marriage with two Tayyi wives suggests that the tribe had links with the Lakhmids, but these were not strong enough to offset the need to keep good relations with the Sassanids. And it was a man of Tayyi, Iyas bin Qabisa, whom Khusro appointed after Al-Nu'man's death as the first and last non-Lakhmid governor in Al-Hira. That's something amazing. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
It's you can see a parallel, being not from the same tribe, an outsider, and Muhammad was an outsider.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is a very strong parallel.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And notice that the fact that he was a man of Tayyi was a big consideration for them. Now, why was that? Because this tribe was causing havoc in the desert areas. They were going on raids. They were going into Persian areas, attacking caravans. And basically, they thought that by making this guy the king, they could control him, and then in turn, he would control the Tayyi and stop the mayhem. That's what they hoped. And, you know, they had already an experience of him earlier on, 25 years before. He didn't rock the boat. He seemed to be a loyal subject. That's what they hoped with him. But they miscalculated, because at the end of the day, he was a man of his tribe, and he put his tribe first. And he put the interests of the people first. And, you know, by that stage, you know, the Arabs, and I use the word Arabs now in the broadest sense, they were they were sick of the Persians. You know, they had suffered under the Persians too frequently. The Persians looked down on them. They might have experienced a sense of inferiority to the Persians, and you know they were eager to bloody their
the
nose.
Sassanids in particular, not any Persians. This is
Yes.
important to know. The House of Sassan only.
Yes, yeah. That's a good point.
Because in a future video we will see, after we come back, we will see other houses of the 7 Parthian houses that were actually friendly with the Arabs and wanted them to take over. This is another research.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, so that would explain why they were able to conquer that area. You know, they needed to have some allies in
They
the
needed
Persian
to
area.
have some information. How will you do that? You need to have some people from Persia to tell you.
Absolutely. So we have also this again from Al-Tabari, and I think this was from Al-Tabari itself rather than a footnote. After Khusro had Al-Numan killed, he appointed Iyas bin Qabisa al-Ta'i as governor over Al-Hira and the other former territories of Al-Numan. Abu, can you say that? Ubaidah? Related when Khusro had fled from Bahram, he passed by Iyas bin Qabisa, and the latter, i.e. Muhammad, gave him a horse and even slaughtered a camel for him. In this way, Khusro showed his gratitude. So in a sense, the fact that he had done this for him when he needed a bit of help, Khusro eventually appointed him as a kind of a favor. Now, whether this is actually something that really happened or not, it just emphasizes how much the Persians thought well of him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we also have a reference to Iyas having a son called Farwa, which is another element of the story. Hani bin Qabisa bin Masud al-Shaybani and Iyas bin Qabisa al-Ta'i. Now, notice that both of them have Qabisa in their name. Now, I don't know if that means that they were brothers. I take it that they weren't. And
no,
just
no, because different. This is al-Shaybani and this is al-Ta'i.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting that they both have that common name.
It's very weird, the name of his son, Farwa. Farwa is the sheep skin, which is the the wool of the sheep. It's called Farwa.
No way. Yes. Well, that would actually explain the reference to him being a father of sheep.
Maybe. Yes. This is good.
Oh my God, that's a great connection, man. That's a fantastic.
And it's very weird. No one ever names his son Farwa. This is funny.
Yeah. So it literally means sheepskin, or the sheep wool.
Like if you make clothes from sheepskin, you say, "We do this from farwa of the sheep." This is exactly it. The wool of the sheep.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing connections. Is that again that confirms the nickname Kabsha, or let's get it right, Abi Kabsha, the father of the sheep?
Yes.
Perfect connection. I think we're on strong grounds here, especially when Al-Bukhari says that Abi Kabsha is the nickname for Muhammad. It's in the tradition.
Yes.
So in any case, it says either Iyas or his son Farwa bin Iyas being at this point the Persian ruler's viceroy in Al-Hira, are mentioned in Baladuri as yielding up the city in 633 to Khalid bin al-Walid's forces on the basis of a peace treaty with the provision that the Iran leaders were now to act as spies for the Arabs against the Persians. Now, I do believe there is some sort of confusion here. Like it does contradict our theory because it puts Iyas on the opposite side with the Arabs coming and attacking. But if we bear in mind that Iyas was deposed way back in like 20 years before, very nearly, 616. No, let me get it right. 617 is when he was deposed. I can't see how he would be involved in in yielding to Khalid. I think he just simply wasn't there because he had already been deposed and someone else was in charge. Would you agree?
Remember the source that you got here is called
Yeah.
Al-Balaziri Al-Futuh. Futuh Al-Balaziri is very late. This is a very late source. This is not even a good source. I know the Muslims take it as a good source, but it is very late. You see the
Are we
chronicle
talking 10th century?
of maybe
Yeah.
even after.
Yeah. So that might be why the confusion.
I don't know if you have here the chronicle of Khuzestan in this presentation, but it mentions that the Lakhmids, they were Ishmaelites. So this is before Islam. So it's logic that it continued.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. So now, essentially, what we have here is we have Iyas and Muhammad. Iyas is essentially Clark Kent, and Superman is Muhammad. And we seem to have them appearing in the same scene, essentially. You know, if we look at the historical records, what we see is Iyas. If we look at the Islamic tradition, it's somehow Muhammad appears. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes, that's exactly it.
So Iyas and Muhammad's careers seem to align to an incredible point. Like, for example, it says, according to what Hisham bin Muhammad has asserted, 1 year and 8 months from the beginning of Iyas bin Qabisa's tenure of power, the Prophet was sent by God on his mission. It's like in perfect alignment, you know. And I'm just going to finish up now. So Iyas ibn Qabisa al-Tayyi. So what are we saying? We saw that Muhammad was the first king of the Arabs, began to reign according to the fragments of the chart of Jacob of Edessa. His nickname was Ibn Abi Kabsha, according to al-Bukhari, which means father of the sheep. And obviously we learned, well, I just learned while we were making the video, that his son Farwa means wool. So that's fantastic. You couldn't make this up. It just sounds like we had planned this, but that wasn't planned.
Yes.
And then the Tayyeh of Muhammad, according to Thomas Presbyter, that's who he says who attacked the Byzantines, and notice how early that date is, 640, and that was referring to 636. So literally only 4 years before. So it's a good solid source. And then it says he was born of a most noble tribe. The most noble tribe would be Tayyeh. Most noble tribe of that people. He was a very prudent man and a foreseer of very many future events. He must have been a prudent man if the Persians had selected him on 2 separate occasions. They obviously did trust him. Well, whether they were right to trust him is another matter, but they did see him as prudent. Yes. And then the last thing is the Saracens rebelled in 618. So
you know, here when they say he was a foreseer of many future events, this, in other words, it says he is a prophet, because the old understanding of being a prophet is that you foresee the future. So absolutely, this is just another way of saying it.
Yeah, he was a prophet, yeah. So you have got all of those ideas coalesced into one, you know, the king, the prophet, and so on. And that's it. So that's the bombshell we wanted to drop on you all. Iyas bin Qabisa al-Tayyi is Muhammad. What the historical person. So forget all the rubbish you've heard about Muhammad and being from Mecca and all that kind of stuff. And you notice as well that Petra didn't appear in any of what we've done.
Let me say this before I forget.
Yeah.
The Lakhmids, remember Ali ibn Abi Talib, he was mentioned as Amir of Al-Hira. Now, if he was from this same line, then it will still make perfect sense. He's from the same family, from the same line, from the same area, from the Iraq region, and also the Quran was Arabized, part of it in Iraq. And this is what Al-Tabari says, this is Islamic tradition here. So the significance of Iraq has always been very high. And Mecca was in Iraq, as we discussed in another video. So Mecca
Yeah.
was the desert in Iraq. Actually, it's the desert between these two parts, Euphrates and Tigris.
Yeah. Now, the key point there, for anyone who's listening who may not have picked up on that, we have Iyas ibn Qabisa al-Tayyi. He was an emir of Hira, and then decades later, we have Ali as an emir of Al-Hira as well. So in other words, Ali was a successor of Iyas. So the tradition says that Ali was of the family of Muhammad. So we see that connection. Now, whether he was actually of the family of Muhammad or whether it was just because he became a successor later down the road, it's hard to say. What do you think? Do you think he was a family member in some way, or do you think is it just because of also being governor of the city?
I think he was a family member because the Sunnis, no matter how much they bash him, they still acknowledge that he was part of the family. So I think he was.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just
So
see if I can.
it's time for the questions. So people should get the questions ready.
Yeah, no. So I'm just going back to the main area here, and let me just put on the cam. I actually had to switch off the video cam so that I didn't freeze my computer. Now it's just literally my seeing the comments, mind blown, serious stuffer. ISIS is right. We were not trying to say ISIS is right here. Antonio Castro says, fascinating, but what role does Petra play? I think Petra is a distraction. It's just the place where the pagans pray towards. I think Dan Gibson has made too much of it, to be honest with you.
It was part of it, but not the whole thing.
No,
it played a role. I don't know how big was it. It played the role, and it was a Mecca, but that doesn't bash the Iraqi Mecca, which was mentioned in 741.
Yeah. So I would say what you see in the 7th century is simply that the pagan Arabs were still praying towards Petra, and also maybe our Abrahamists were also praying in that direction, simply because as part of the Abrahamist sect, one of the people that they were devoted to was Harun, which is Aaron, and Aaron is buried in Petra, so that would fit with that.
Remember when I told you about David Rohl? He is the one who revisits the Egyptian chronology, and he's a genius. Actually, I really like his work. When he did his research, he came up that Dushara is actually a reference to Arun or Aaron.
Yeah.
So this would make it even easier to understand.
Okay. Now I am going to try my best to take some questions. I'm going to probably go back up to see if I miss any questions. Would you mind just repost them? So I'm going to start with this question here from Jojo. Hopefully it comes up.
You put it, but then it went away.
Try again.
Yes.
Now, who is that prophet that came with the sword? Now, do you want to answer that one, Borat?
I think he's referencing the Doctrina Jacobi, if I'm right.
Yeah.
The Doctrina Jacobi, this could be a video in itself. It might be referencing to someone called Maslama, which is Musaylama the liar. And this guy did exist. He was not a fraud, because I found the name of his father in Sibius' account. And actually, the name of his father, Habib, they call him Small Eyes. That's in Sibius' account, and I'm asking why Small Eyes? Is it because he was an Asian?
I don't know. I'm sort of inclined to accept that it might simply be ES, but yeah, I'm not 100%. Like it's not solid one way or the other, because it could be multiple prophets. But I'm inclined to go with who was the biggest person in the day, and I would have thought the Lakhmid king would have been. Let's take another question. Try this one here. From Odin, what connections do you make between this new real Muhammad and the Quran? Now, do you want to take
I
that one, Murad?
personally think the Quran doesn't have anything to do with Muhammad either. He was a yes or not. The Quran was done by Abdul Malik, and probably part of it was by forced translation without
Yeah,
having Jesus as God. And
yeah,
Al-Hajjaj is the one who compiled it. Then later the Abbasids changed it even more.
yeah. I do agree with you there. I don't think that it is actually referring to Muhammad. In fact, the people who are talking, if you like, in the text, they're go. It's hard to tell from the context who's talking to who. You know, it's like first person singular, first person plural, then it becomes second person, then third person. It's very difficult to see who's talking to who. And I think what they've done is they've taken documents that probably existed in the various sects, like the Abrahamic sect, and mixed it up with Syriac sources and stories and folklore and all mixed it all together. And the references to Muhammad are simply the blessed one, as we discussed. The four instances could easily be referenced to Jesus, just a synonym for Jesus. And like the thing to bear in mind as well, that the multiple occasions where it says, "Oh prophet" or something to that effect in the Quran, they've had to add Muhammad in brackets subsequent to the Quran to make the reader think it's referring to Muhammad, when in the original it doesn't say that. Um, um, I'm going to put up this one simply because I see this around quite a bit, and it's probably good to address it once and for all. The whole region was made up by the Vatican. Come on. It's laughable.
It's always the Vatican.
It's always no.
Actually,
So
yes. Let me tell you that a lot of ex-Muslims, they think that the Vatican created Islam,
yeah,
and they always say that they have this secret library that has all the documents.
yeah.
But when you look at this secret library, actually you find that the Vatican is innocent of a lot of things, and it had a good conversation with Galileo. And if it releases this library, then it will make it look a little better. So no, it was not created by the Vatican.
No. The thing is, people think that people have an understanding of the Vatican now, that they had an international communication back in those days, but actually everything was run according to the patriarch. So the local patriarch was the one who dealt with their own region. So, for example, the patriarch of Jerusalem looked after that area, and then there was one for Alexandria and so on. So the Vatican had enough to deal with in its own area, which was they were dealing with, I think it was the plague was happening around that time, so they had enough to deal with. I don't think, like, we've already explained sufficiently what caused Islam to begin without any reference to any outside factors. It's unnecessary to bring the Vatican in on it. Shall we have a look and see what any other questions? So if I miss a question, just repost it. I can see this one here. Let me try this here. What's the relationship between the Lakhmids and the Umayyads? Well, if I can start maybe, and Murad, you can follow on this one. In one of the sources that I looked at, it refers to Umayyads as the Westerners. So I would say that the Umayyads, if we just look at the evidence we've looked at today and not anything we've looked at in previous videos, I think the evidence would suggest the Umayyads were in some way connected more with the Ghassanids than the Lakhmids. The Lakhmids were the Easterners, whereas the Umayyads were seen as the Westerners. So that's why you have Muawiyah ruling from Damascus and Abdul Malik the same, whereas the Easterners, like Ali is an Easterner. We've seen today Iyas or Muhammad, he ruled from here as well in the East. So that's my answer to it. Do you want to say anything on that, Murad?
Well, the Islamic tradition has it that there were no Lakhmids when the Umayyads started ruling. But I think that the Umayyads were against the Lakhmids. And the Ghassanids are the ones who later morphed into Sunnah, and the Lakhmids are the one who later morphed into the Shia. That's how I see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's move on. Let's see. Unfortunately, I'm trying to get to the questions, and questions are coming hard and fast. And so sorry if I'm missing someone. So here we go. Serious Stuffer. Hello, Serious Stuffer. I've seen you on the channel quite a bit. Does Islam today simply benefit from the destruction of the Byzantine libraries and documents today, in addition to the purposeful destruction of sources by the caliphs themselves? Do you want to answer that one?
Well, yes, but you see, the Syriac literature is the most thing that shows you the ugly face of Islam, and that's why they kept killing them. And even till today, Turkey killed the Armenians and stuff. The Armenians have a very rich source about Islam.
Yeah.
Byzantine, yes, but Armenia the most.
Yeah. No. I'm just looking for any questions I might have missed. Let me just say, if you have any new questions, if you don't mind, just reposting them, so that way I will get the most recent question.
There is a question I see here.
Abdul Malik, that one?
Yes, Abdul Malik.
Yeah, so look at that one. Dominus says, did Abdul al-Malik born in Merv, or was he born in Merv, not Medina?
Well, you see, the Islamic tradition says in Medina, but Volker Pop, the numismatic, is the one who came up with the idea that he was born in Merv. I think Oleg goes also with this. I personally think it's more Merv.
Yeah, I did agree with you on that one. How it all happened that they transferred over to the Gasnet area is still unclear, so we'll probably have to do a bit more research into that side of things. Now, a question from our good friend Lee. Do you see this more as an invasion or a continuation of the Persian civil wars? That's an excellent question. I would be inclined to say it's a bit of both, isn't it, really? The civil wars that were going on between the Lakhmids and the Ghassanids sort of continued, really, even after peace was established. There was always that conflict. How much of it was an invasion, and how much of it was just simply the local forces taking charge of their own areas, you know? I think it might be more of that, and that's sometimes they have exaggerated the extent of the battles because they view it as outsiders from the Hijaz coming in, when in fact it was probably more likely just people from the area just taking back their own land.
Well, you see, I want to answer this one. He says Persian civil wars. This is a good way of putting it, because you have 7 Parthian dynasties, 7 houses in Persia. The house of Sassan ruled for a long time. What about the other houses? Did they pay the Arabs and tell them how to get back the country? This is the question. It will be for a future video, and I will just tell him to research about the house of Mihran.
Okay, another question here. This real Muhammad, what language did he speak? Any idea? He preached monotheletism, maybe, or monotheism, or what? Not too sure what you mean by mono. Which one? Because there's a number of different words beginning with mono. So I'm going to take a hazard at a guess at this. I think he probably spoke Aramaic and Arabic. He would have needed those 2 languages in particular, and it's probable, considering he was in charge and he was communicating with the Byzantines, he may have some knowledge of Greek, though I think he could have got by without that. But I would have thought Aramaic and or Syriac, if you like, and Arabic. Do you want to comment on that?
So maybe it will be Nabataean and Aramaic, and maybe he also knows Persian. How come he will have a talk with Khosrow if he doesn't know Pahlavi?
Yeah. So yeah, maybe he spoke that as well. So Surash has just confirmed he meant monotheism. Any idea he preached monotheism? Yes, Sebios says that he preached about the God of Abraham. So I think that's pretty clear. Now,
No,
yeah,
I think his question is about ES. No, we don't know if he did. ES on his own, we don't know.
right.
We have to be
Okay,
clear.
it's claimed that he did, but maybe he didn't. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair enough. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, let me just take this point here. See if I got the right. No, that was the wrong one. There was another question. I'm sorry, I'm new to this. Every time I try and click on something, something moves. Let me see. Is this the one? Muhammad's tribe was Quraysh. Okay, should we address that one? I would say that Quraysh is the name, and I think Murad and I differ on this one, but I think Quraysh was the nickname for the confederation that was formed rather than it being a tribe. I believe Muhammad's real tribe was Tayyaye. That's what the early sources say. But when they needed a word to refer to the unification between the Lakhmids and the Ghassanids, they called that the Quraysh. And I think the word comes from a word which means cow herders. Isn't that what you've learned on that, Murad?
Yes, that's the meaning of the word. But it's important to say that there is no mention of Quraysh whatsoever in any sources.
Yeah.
The only time that Muhammad is mentioned with Tayyaye.
Now, there's a question here. I think it's connected with Quraysh. Let me just put it up here. How does Uthman and Abdul Malik's use of the Qurayshi dialect play into the standardization of the Islamic faith after the fact? Do you want to have a go at that one?
The Qurayshi dialect. I'm not sure if this actually exists. If you look at the Qurayshi dialect, you will find that it's mostly the Old Testament dialect, but in Aramaic, which is Tarjum. And this is what the Quran takes from a lot of things. So this is quote-unquote Qurayshi dialect. But other than that, I don't know.
Yeah. I think this idea of it being a dialect is sort of a spin that was put on it to explain the origins of it, and probably because they had forgotten the true nature of things in the early days. The Syriac connection was soon lost later as it shrunk in its importance, but it would have had a huge influence in the early days when they were composing the Quran. Now, let me just see if there's any other questions. Apologies if I've missed a question, just repost it. Apologies if I've missed anything. Right, this question here by Alan Murad. Is that a nod to your name, Murad? I wonder. Do you think the Sana manuscript reflects a pre or post Abdul Malik version of the Quran? I will.
Me to answer, or you answer first?
I'll just throw in my penny's worth here. I think it was a post Abdul Malik version of the Quran. I don't think there was a pre Abdul Malik version of anything. I think it was him that started the ball rolling, and I think it took decades before they got anywhere towards a codified book. It's even in the 730s, according to John of Damascus, it was still in separate books or surahs. That's my take on it. What you'd like to say yourself there?
I think the palimpsest, or the lower layer, I agree with Gerrit Puin, who is the one who studies it, that it's maybe in the late 600s or the early 700s. I agree with that. Then the upper layer is even further in time.
Now, yeah. Another question here. Our good friend Vilnius, say it right correctly these days. Now, Vilnius has got up at 3:30 in the morning in his madness to watch us. So he definitely deserves a question here. My
Yes.
question, Sneaker, was or is there any existing Abrahamist documents for primary reference? To my knowledge, as of now, there's none, and it may be that they were burned as part of the creation of the Quran. There's numerous references in Al-Bukhari to them gathering up all the bits and pieces that they used in the creation of the Quran and burning them. So that might have been the end of those documents, but there's a good chance that we'll find some of them. Now, even in the rock inscriptions, we see elements of that religion on the rock inscriptions because there's numerous prayers and evocations to the various people that were important to the Abrahamists. So things like Lord of Musa and Isa, Lord of Ibrahim and Harun, and so on. So there is where you can find it even still in the rock inscriptions. And there are literally hundreds of those all over the place. But to date, as far as we know, there aren't any. There's a good likelihood that if we do find any Quranic materials that seem to come from, let's say, the 6th century, I would argue that it's probably that what you're looking at in reality is an Abrahamist text, not a Quranic text. Do you want to come in on that?
I think when they say you became a Muslim, just in the very early stage, it means you became an Abrahamist. You surrendered to the old classic religion of Abraham. No Jesus, no crucifixion, no, just simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. I am a terrible multitasker. When I'm looking at the comment section, I am not able to hear what you're saying. So apologies. I'm just going to say yes to whatever you said there. Apologies.
That's okay.
Now this one here, it's more as a comment. Murad, Allah's actual name is Lat, Manat, Uzza are Sabian deities. Nabatea is Near Eastern, not Arabian. Arabia was populated by Sabians. Please check it out, the Ginza Rabbah. Do you want to say anything on that? And hi, Shoban, by the way.
I will check the Ginza Rabbah because I know about it, but I didn't check it yet.
My take, for what it's worth, I think we run the danger of anachronism. Like, if we look at the name Allah at different periods of Arabian history, the name has been used in different ways. So, for example, if you were to go back, say, 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago and look at an inscription, it will have definitely a pagan meaning, and you'll have it in conjunction with Al-Lats and so on, and Al-Uzza. But there are definite inscriptions in the 7th century which aren't using them in a pagan way, but are using them in a different way. They're not quite Jewish, they're not quite Christian. Presumably they're Abrahamist, or they are belonging to another sect, maybe Judeo-Christian, let's say. So it depends on the time and depends on the location. There were pagan groups well into the 750s, and we know that from Yehuda Nevo's work, and he found evidence of that in the Negev area, especially in Nasana, which is in the northern area of the Negev. So I don't know if you want to say anything more on that one.
Yes, I want to say that the coin of Khosrow the first has Allah on it. Actually, it's Lillah, when Islam didn't even appear yet. So he was Zoroastrian, and he had Lillah on it. So this name might have come from more Zoroastrian influence.
Yeah. Now, another one here from Odon. What do you make of the rebuilding of Jerusalem Temple, most Abrahamic place there is? There was an attempt in 614 led by Persia with an alliance of Persian Jews and Arabs, and also in 638. So I take it that the question is to do with those early dates. What do we make of them trying to rebuild it in 614 and 638? Do you want to have a go with that one, Murad, even first?
Well, this is a very important part to study, and I don't know any parallels yet, but it's certainly important. So I don't have a strong answer here.
Yeah. My take on it is that the Temple Mount was of importance to both groups for different reasons. The Jews wanted to rebuild their temple, and this had been going on for centuries, and their attempt was continuously foiled by different groups. Sometimes it was foiled by the Byzantines, sometimes foiled by Persians. It seemed like they were getting somewhere, and they were just so unlucky. Now the Arabs wanted to they wanted to build a place of prayer over the rock connected with Abraham and Isaac, because in the traditions, both Jewish and Abrahamic traditions, this was the spot where Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac. So obviously this was central to the Arabs' identity. So it wasn't just an identity important to the Jews. Now we know from, I think it was, I'm going to say Sabius, I may be wrong, it might be one of the other chronicles, that the Jews built a wooden place of worship there, and the Arabs were jealous of them, and they took it over, and it became a place of worship for them. And it was then Abdul Malik to decide to build a permanent place of worship on the same site again. And if you, actually, I'm probably giving something away. I will have a video coming on Jay Smith's channel in a few days on the Dome of the Rock. So if you want to know more, I'm not going to spoil it for you. There's a lot of interesting details to do with this, which I'm going to discuss. Probably it'll be coming in a few days' time. So hope that's okay. Now, right, let's try this question here. Antonio Castro Enriquez, sorry. Another question: how did traditional Islamic historiography see this Ilyas bin Kabisa guy? So, do you want to answer that one, or shall I?
Well, it doesn't give much about him, but it gives the most important thing is that it was the first victory of the Arabs against the Persians. So this in itself is an important detail. Other than that, you don't find much.
Yeah. And I suppose the key thing is the fact that the al-Bukhari seems to confuse in inverted commas him with Muhammad, because the nickname, which must have been for Iyas bin Kabisa, which it was Abi Kapsha, father of the sheep, that surely must have been for Iyas. So it's strange that al-Bukhari refers to it as being to do with Muhammad. But obviously it's not strange if we accept that he was Muhammad. Now, let me just see if I missed any questions. Serious Stuffer says, I'm loving your collaboration with Jay. Yeah, we're both World and myself will be in all of those. Oh, well, bar one, I think. And it's been tiring, as you can imagine, but it's been good fun, and there's some good stuff coming. Now, let me just take a question from our good friend Shane, and hopefully I don't miss anyone. So apologies if I'm missing anyone, but just repost your question if I miss you. Shane Fisher says, have you read Shoemaker's Apocalypse of Empire? And if so, does it play any contribution to what you all have started thus far? I haven't. Have you?
No. I don't know about this book, actually.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what it is about. Let me just see in case if you say. But no, I'll probably keep that in mind. Let's take another question from Ryan this time. No. Would Gibson's work on Petra be better understood as an account of the Caliphate's attempt to put an end to the Arab paganism, which was based from there with Hijaz. Yes, I would say yes. I think if I'm okay to answer this one first, Murad.
Yes, yes.
My take is I think Abd al-Malik wanted to get everyone focused on Jerusalem, the temple in Jerusalem, and it didn't seem to work, and they carried on praying towards Petra. And then at a later time, in the early part of the 8th century, they built another place of worship down in Mecca. And somehow or other, that one became dominant. And in the decades that followed, as the new religion started to form, it basically, if you imagine that the Abrahamist sect started to grow relative to the pagan version. And eventually there was an overlap between the two. So there were people who were ex-pagans who brought their pagan ideas into the Abrahamist sect, which was now focused on Muhammad, whereas in the past it was focused on 4 people: Musa, Harun, Isa, and Ibrahim. Well, like Ibrahim was the top dog in the original sect, but the big change was to make Muhammad the key person. And this was for political reasons, I would argue. I don't know if you want to say anything there.
I personally don't think Petra played a huge role. Not because I don't want the idea, I just cannot find it. But what I can see is Al-Hajjaj, he wanted to divert the Hajj or the Hajj to Jerusalem. So Ibn Zubayr, he built his Kaaba in Mecca, Iraq. So Al-Hajjaj, he ran after him and he demolished the Iraqi Mecca Kaaba. And then they made up hadith that going to Jerusalem is way better than going to any Kaaba. That's what I think.
And actually, he was, I don't know if you've said it in case I've missed it, but he was governor of Iraq, so it makes sense for him to do that there.
He never went to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Now, this is from Martin Malloy, and if it is the Martin Malloy I know, you went to university with me. Hello, Martin. Do you think that Islam started out as henotheism until Muawiyah made it monotheism? Are the satanic verses a clue to this? Now, do you know what? I don't believe I can remember what henotheism means. Would it be polytheism? I have no idea.
Or he means henotheism.
I don't know what the word means. Martin, could you tell us what the word means?
Adherence to one particular god out of several, especially.
Oh yes, okay. There are many gods, but you give allegiance to one. Okay, great. Yeah, that's actually a great word, and I should really know it. That's a good question. No, I personally don't think so. I think there were some who were strict, and they were always monotheistic among the Arabs, and then there were others that, as you say, were henotheism or henotheists, and I think that's probably it. It's going to be a mixed bag because with culture and religion and so on, there's a lot of grey areas between different groups and so on. They don't all fall into nice little neat boxes, you know. We like to think they do, but they often don't. Now, Annie, I don't know, did you want to say anything more on that one?
No, we can take another question.
Yeah, let's have a look, see if there's anything I missed. Right, okay, this question is an interesting one. I saw a question, will you publish all those findings? Dr. Marcelo, let me just, well, I won't show the question, but will you publish the findings? Hopefully at some point we will. I think I will write a book at some stage, but for the meantime, we're just going to focus on getting the research done, but hopefully. Now, Suk has this question to both of us. What is your take on spreading of Islam in Central Asia? Why nomadic groups adopted Islam faster than anywhere else? Good question. You want to have a stab at that one, Murad?
Maybe because it was very close to their own understanding of life and philosophy. It was hedonistic, and it goes well with them. And it goes well with expanding the empire. That's what they always wanted. The Huns wanted this. Even the Huns, they did a great immigration, and this is something historical. It's called, I think, the Great Immigration. I will try to find it. So they were muhajirun also, like the Muslims. So they looted the land and took the women captives. This is all very good for them.
Yeah. I would argue that the marketing in the Islamic tradition was excellent, and it was geared towards the different groups that they were moving into. So, like, if you look at the way they presented Muhammad, so to suit the guys who were in Khorasan, they have Muhammad dressed in women's clothing, which fitted in with the Scythistic religion that was there. So the locals would have expected that of a prophet. For the Buddhists, they had Muhammad being born in the year of the elephant, which matches up with the Buddha's mum having a dream of an elephant. So that's another way that they packaged the deal. I would agree with Murad on the hedonism. If you have the lure of 72 virgins and all this other stuff that they introduced later, that obviously is going to make your religion quite a popular one. The other thing is they dropped in lots of ideas from the religions that they met in the different areas. So for example, when they were in Zoroastrian areas, suddenly they absorbed Zoroastrian beliefs, like the whole mythology around heaven and hell is totally Zoroastrian. And they also copied the Manichaean ideas. So the idea of Jibril visiting Muhammad is totally out of the Manichaeism playbook. And what else? That's about it, really. I would say that they marketed their religion very well into the different religions. The other thing is, well, I would say, is that the people who wrote the hadiths were from those Central Asian areas. So that helped in the expansion of the religion. So it allowed for a creation of a myth very easily, because they were far removed from the origins of Islam. They weren't familiar with the exact mechanics of how it all started because it was so far away from them. So I think that's how I would put it. Now let's see if I've missed any other questions. Go to new comments. Right. Sorry, everyone. I'm sort of new to this and trying to find my way around. Right. There's this question that's mentioned there. C99. Any connection with the surah called Elephant? Do you want to have a go at that one first?
Well, I cannot get into this one because this will be very long. But there is a separate video that we did about the real historicity of this surah. You can go check this out.
Yeah. Let me see if there's anything I've missed. Okay, I'll try this one. Shane Fisher. So there is a historical contradiction between what tribe Muhammad came from. One source say Tayaye, and traditional sources say Quraysh. Correct. Yeah. So there's a conflict there. That's short and sweet, I think, for that one. Yeah. Now, Austin, good friend Austin, I see your question. I'm sorry, I may have missed earlier questions that you had. So where did Islam start? Was Malik based in Syria, or did he move and start Islam somewhere else? Was it Iraq? Okay, so I'll have a go at that one first, Murad, if I may, and you can have a shot at it. So we start off with the historical Iyas, who basically led a war, a battle, a political movement, essentially. He had religious elements because he was trying to rally the troops and so on. and it allowed him to build sort of pride in his followers because of the religious elements. Okay, but after he died, there was chaos for so from say the 630s all the way up to the time of Muawiyah in the 650s, because that's about 20 years of chaos. Muawiyah managed to pull it all together, but it was still fragile enough. And then there was a second fitna towards the end of that century. Can't remember the exact year, or was that? Am I right? I think so. And I think there was a recognition by Abdul Malik that they needed something to glue everyone together, if you like, to bring peace. So the religion that they produced was based on the Abrahamist religion, and they focused especially on submission. So submission to the leaders, especially, and then to Allah. But the idea was they were trying to make the people amenable and loyal to the caliphate. That's my take on it.
Well, I personally think it started in Iraq with Abdullah ibn Zubair. He was in Mecca, Iraq, not Saudi Arabia. When Abdul Malik defeated him, he and Hajjaj, they started to put it in a different light. They said, yes, Muhammad is the messenger of God, but let me tell you how he was. And come to the Dome of Barak and give me your money. So it started as an idea from the zealous Abdullah ibn Zubair in Iraq, then got started in Syria, then got again later in Iraq with the Abbasids. They got back and then got more myths attached to it.
Yeah, I actually forgot about that. So yeah, so possibly Iraq first to get the ideas going, and then adopted by Abdul Malik then later. Okay, do you want to take this question? Was the Battle of the Camel historical? Let's have a look at this one. Oh, what have I done? Let me try it again. Was the Battle of the Camel historic? If so, was Aisha in it? Reaction time, apologies everyone. Let's try it again. There's a lag here, so I hit a button, it takes about 4 seconds for it to show. Let's just try it one more time. Is that going to show? Okay. Was the Battle of the Camel historic? If so, was Aisha in it? And if so, is there a link to Muhammad from her? And we've lost Murad. I'm of the opinion that let me think. I don't think it was historic. I haven't seen any evidence to back it up. I don't know if there's any evidence that Aisha was a historical person either. But that's all I have to say on that one. Unfortunately, Murad has lost his connection. So we'll probably take maybe 2 more questions. So if there was anything that you feel that we've missed, that you would like us to address, let's take this one here. Vilnius says too much Guinness causes lag. That's exactly it. Now, Shane says, have you read Christmas in the Quran by Warraq? I believe so. Yes, I have, I think. It won't come on Kindle until 2035. I've read a PDF of that, so I don't know if maybe it exists already as a paper and it's due to be to go on the Kindle later. That's a bit weird now, but yeah. So I don't know where you can get it. I have Murad is come back. I don't know where you can get it, but I know you can get it as a PDF form. I don't know if you want me to say anything on that, but there's certainly. We're just looking at this point about Christmas in the Quran by Warraq. If my memory serves me right, there is a surah in the Quran which talks about what was it? It talks about
yes, I think it's called
star rising in
Surah Al-Qadr.
Yeah. It refers to something like a star and the morning time, and
Yes.
we believe it's to do with Christmas, but it's been misinterpreted.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It says we have sent him, or it. So it could be we have sent him in this night, which is Jesus.
Yeah. So a follow-up question by Shane is: does it make any significant contribution? It does. I think it shows that there's a Syriac connection, I think, in terms of the sources.
Christian
question.
Syriac.
Yeah. Martin Malloy, do you think that no alcohol and numerous wives, slave girls was about military order and not morals? I would argue, or maybe you want to go first on this one.
Yes,
I would
of
argue
course I do.
yeah.
Islam was a military ideology.
Yeah. My take on it, I think the no alcohol bit and the numerous wives, that part was in the Abrahamic sect already, so that wasn't anything particularly new. I think the slave girls aspect was new, and that was to keep them all happy. And yes, I do think it was a great way to run a military army, or a military force, I meant to say. Now, how about one more question? We might close off with that. So if you've got any more questions, one last question, and we'll call it a day.
Yes.
I don't think there's any
Give
more.
us your last question and we'll make it good, so that
Your
it'll be
killer question.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, speak now, forever hold your peace. It's been a long live stream. No? Well, that's probably a good place to stop then. I think we've probably answered enough for today. So, listen, thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope you found this informative. And I would advise you to check out Jay Smith's channel over the next week or so, because you'll see much more of myself and Murad, with a lot of good material coming up. And don't know if you want to say anything more.
We can give them a spoiler and say that there are 3 videos that are coming up with Jay Smith. So keep an eye on that. And one of them will be on the Quran. It will be very significant. And the other will be on the Dome of the Rock. And I will not say much more than that. Keep an eye on that, because this is high quality research.
Yeah, and I've also got a video on rock inscriptions, which is an update to an earlier video that I've done on that area. So hopefully with all of the different videos, we will make things really clear. So I'm going to speak some Irish. Gura Mahagat, Martin Malloy. That means thank you. For those who don't know, Martin's from Ireland. So Shabin, thank you. And
thank you, SSB. I always see your good comments, and thank you sincerely.
Yeah, thank you, Vinicius. And Shane, thank you. And who else? Who else? We didn't.
Shobin Thomas, thank you sincerely.
Yeah, Apple. I hope we got around to everyone's. Saba Jamil, Shane Fisher.
Shane Fisher.
Austin, of course, our good friend Austin. Gregorian, Zukmitich, Gregorian C99. Sydney. So thank you, all of you. And we are both, I think it's fair to say, quite tired after all the research and videos over the last few weeks, and we're looking forward to a break. So we're going to be taking a break for a few weeks, and we hope to see you all very soon. So with that, I would say good night.
I want to just ask Austin O'Keefe, are you related to Ken O'Keefe? Or is this just the same name?
Ken O'Keefe. Who's Ken O'Keefe?
He appeared on the TV multiple times. So if you want to answer, if you don't want to answer, of course, this is up to you.
Yeah,
There is a
just
question here says that does Bala agree with what we believe about the real Muhammad? We don't know. We just this is very new, so we don't know his opinion yet.
yes, we don't. And it's a pity. Actually, we haven't mentioned it, but it's a pity he's not able to be with us because of the COVID-19. He's sort of locked down. He can't join us, unfortunately. So it'd be interesting to hear. No, Austin says no, he doesn't know him.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
So this map, I don't know which way to go. Will I go this way or this way? This way. This map behind me is a record of my cycle trips. So I'm hoping to add a few more lines to the map over the next few weeks, going on a bit of a cycling trip. So that's why I'm be off air for quite a while. But anyway, I don't know if you want to say anything more, Murad?
No, thank you very much for tuning in. And I saw that we have almost 70 people, maybe more now watching.
Yeah.
So this is very good. Thank you very much.
Might be the biggest group we've had, which is excellent.
Yes.
So listen, thanks everyone, and God bless, and we'll see you very soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.